You bring up a dirty word, assimilation. Assimilation. I wrote a few years ago saying that maybe we should end immigration. It's been a 20-year program called One America, trying to get everybody on the same page. It's funny, as I did the Claremont Fellowship earlier this summer, I was doing a lot of reading of original documents and contextual documents and communications from not only the Constitution, the federal Constitution, but also the state constitutions. And all of them said together that there needed to be the establishment of public schools in order to cultivate a patriotic spirit in the people and to teach them about Republican government. Abraham Lincoln goes so far as to say that we need something called a political religion. George Washington himself as well in his farewell address, also addressing this like energy of American spirit and patriotism that is required. Ronald Reagan said the same thing. Even James Lindsay just the other day said we need a resurgence in American common sensibility. I think that there's a common theme running through all of this. Obviously, that it's a proactive engagement to create the American spirit. It just doesn't happen by itself. How would you propose to assimilate all of the recent newcomers here to America? I read recently that in Montgomery County in Maryland, which is just outside of D.C., darn near 40% of the residents there are not native born. People are bringing their cultures and their language and their histories from all over the world. They're coming here under the promise of just a better life. How do you propose to assimilate these forces, these people, these cultures into this American spirit that has been clearly emphasized by our great leaders throughout time and history as an essential component to keep the country together?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer your question first, and then I'm going to offer a pessimistic thought for why my answer is so hard and so difficult, right? So the answer that I'll offer you is, look, this has been done in the past, right, with other waves of immigrants. And what we do is we teach important truths about a shared American culture. We get people proud of the same historical traditions. You know, again, like my ancestors were not drafting the founding fathers' documents. They were fighting in the founding fathers' wars, which I think makes them part of that founding generation. But a lot of people have even though they don't have a direct, ancestral lineage, they say these are our founding fathers too. The things that this country did, I am necessarily going to participate in it, feel proud about it, teach my children to honor those things. I'm going to send them to schools that instead of teaching them that the founding fathers are evil people, send them to schools that teach that the founding fathers are good people. And importantly, if you don't have some shared historical symbols, some sense of a shared past, I think it's very impossible to have any shared future. And so I really do think that we have to stop this nonstop assault on American history, tearing down statues of people from the past, making everyone think that we should judge people by their worst flaws and not by some of their greatest ideas and their greatest deeds. These are all things that you can do as a political body in your public schools, in your universities, in the curricula that you pass down to children, in the way that your leaders talk about these issues. Now, here's my concern, I guess, and this is sort of the more pessimistic spin on this, is everything that I just said, it's not rocket science, but there are like very few American leaders who would even be willing to do that. Be willing to teach real civics and patriotism, a true and honest and patriotic assessment of American history. Very few people are actually willing to do this. A lot of our people don't like critical race theory, but a lot of them are very uncomfortable going the next step and saying, well, what should we teach if not critical race theory? Because this is the tough part. Call it critical race theory, critical theory, call it wokeism or social progressivism. I don't care what word you put on it. But at the end of the day, the most powerful ideology among the leadership of this country is not Christianity or American political theology or Abraham Lincoln's political religion. It is wokeism. It is social progressivism. It's globalism. Again, I don't care what word you put on it. And this is sort of the worry that I have with assimilation is like when you and I talk about assimilation, okay, 1980 style assimilation, everybody believes in their shared country. They all feel a certain obligation to it. They feel a certain duty to build it. Okay, that's good. What does assimilation mean in 2021, right? In some ways, what it means is You come to America, you learn that America is an evil place. You go to Harvard, you put your preferred pronouns in your biography, and you learn to hate the people who live in the American heartland, right? There's this weird way where elite culture is so garbage right now. And again, like I'm a populist at my core, but I think any populist movement has to have leaders who are actually willing to get the things done that the people want done. Our leaders right now are so corrupt and so vile that if you assimilate into their culture, you're assimilating into like garbage liberal elite culture. You're not assimilating into traditional American culture. And so this is a tough pickle for me. I don't even know what the right answer is here, because you can't just teach these things. You can't teach that we live in a great country if the leaders are actively aligned against it. So almost the thing that you need to do, step one in the process, is to totally replace, like rip out like a tumor, the current American leadership class, and then reinstall some sense of American, political religion, some sense of shared values, and then from there, then you can have successful assimilation. I don't want, like I think about this with my son. I've got two boys, 4-year-old, 18-month-old. In the same way that I think I was sort of being assimilated into elite American culture, when I went to Yale Law School, 2013, 2014, I graduated, 2016, this book comes out. Like there are all of these weird ways in which I was being assimilated, but into something that was really ugly and disgusting. I don't want my kid to assimilate into that. And without that, what is there? And this is sort of, I think, the task. This is why I think conservatism has to be a counter-revolutionary force at this moment. We're not just talking about assimilating new immigrants into a American culture. We're talking about replacing garbage elite culture with traditional American culture. That's in some ways a hell of a lot larger of a lift.
I had several follow-up questions loaded, but you said something that I would like to zero down on. How do we effectively, quote, rip out the disgusting leadership class?
Oh, man. I mean,
because let me expand on that just a second, because and I'm going to give you a little cover here, because it's not just, obviously elections, that's one thing. Okay. But unfortunately, this evil leadership class has already taken over all of our institutions, all of the media, all of the academy, all of our corporations, every educational institution, every arts and culture institution, even every freaking sporting institution that we've had. Yeah. So and I agree with you. I agree with you in everything that you said in terms of we're assimilating people into a garbage culture that's teaching them to hate America. So that is our current pipeline, right? From K through 12 through the universities, the current pipeline is to turn them into those people that we just called evil and disgusting. How do we, aside from elections, how do we rip out this leadership class? What do we do? Is it even possible to renovate or rehab these institutions from the inside? And the reason why I ask that particular angle is because from my perspective, I've seen these institutions taken over from the ground up. It was just an adjunct professor. They had some classes, then they get tenure, then they become department head, then they're the university professor, university president. The corporations, they hire these new kids. The new kids demand the change. The change goes to HR. HR makes a policy, and then the CEOs are woke. The government official staffers, they start demanding woke from their candidates, and before you know it, it's in the halls of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Kavanaugh hearings, radical feminism, and then Joe Biden addresses the joint session of Congress and says white supremacy terror, which is just any white guy being upset at the government, is the number one domestic threat that we face. So these institutions are corrupted and rotted to the core. This elite ideology is everywhere and in all the things. What other options do we have besides voting them out, which we're seeing is ineffectual?
Yeah. So again, this is like a tough question, but this is maybe the question that confronts us right now, right? So
yes.
Okay. So one model is, what happened to Germany after the Nazis lost, or what happened to the Iraqis after we threw Saddam Hussein out. And, denazification, de-Baathification, there was this massive recognition that you couldn't just put, replace the bad people, replace the bad Nazis with the good Germans. There was this entire effort to deinstitutionalize that ideology. And by the way, I think that a lot of the lessons learned in the 40s are being applied to the United States. There's this weird way where you're kind of like completely de-Americanizing American culture. That's really what's going on. So I mean, I think that there are two different ideas here, right? So one is like, there's this guy Curtis Yarvin who's written about some of these things, and so one is to basically accept that this entire thing is going to fall in on itself, right? And so the task of conservatives right now is to preserve as much as can be preserved. And then when the inevitable collapse of the country comes, ensure that conservatives are able to sort of help build back the country in a way that's actually better, not Joe Biden's build back better, but actually some sort of reconstruction of the country. I think that's too pessimistic and too defeatist. I tend to think that we should seize the institutions of the left and turn them against the left, right? We need like a de-Bathification program, but like a de-wokeification program in the United States, right? So like, let me give you a couple examples. So one of the things I've always been very sympathetic to is this idea that we don't have a real constitutional republic anymore. What we have is an administrative state, right? The administrative state controls everything, right? So to the point that like when Donald Trump wins, he can't even sometimes get his people in core positions of authority in the administrative state. It's like, well, do we have a constitutional republic? The founding fathers actually created a very powerful chief executive, a very powerful president. But if he can't even fire the people in his own administration, like, is this really a successful republic? So a lot of conservatives have said we should deconstruct the administrative state. We should basically eliminate the administrative state. And I'm sympathetic to that project, but another option is that we should just seize the administrative state for our own purposes. We should fire all of the people. I mean, I think Trump is going to run again in 2024. I think he'll probably win again in 2024. And he'll win by a margin such that he will be the president of the United States in January of 2025. I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it. Because this is, I think, a constitutional level crisis. If we continue to let bureaucrats control the entire country, even when Republicans win elections, then we've lost. We've just permanently lost. We've permanently given up. And so that's sort of how I think about this, is that, okay, so you do that, and then what do you do at the Department of Education? Well, you do what Viktor Orban has done in Hungary, which is basically say, you're not allowed to teach critical race theory anymore. You're not allowed to teach critical gender theory anymore. You're not allowed to teach your doctors that they should experiment on 10-year-old children with hormonal therapy. You're not allowed to do those things and get $1 of federal money or $1 of state money. And that funding will dry up very quickly. And then, you actually just, I think, go down American institutions and make it possible for conservatives to actually govern and succeed in these institutions in a way where they're currently cut out. That's basically my strategy, is like deinstitutionalize the left, reinstitutionalize the right. It is very hard. It will require men and women of incredible courage, but I don't see another way out. I mean, I really can't get over how crazy things have gotten. And if you're not recognizing in this moment how crazy things have gotten and how outside the box we need to think, then I think you're ultimately not really serious about taking back the country.
I agree. And I got to say, JD, I'm very happy to hear some of this energy coming out of you. Very muscular, very aggressive. These are the exact kind of things that we need. I've been saying that we need a critical conservative theory, and by that I mean the critical part, which is to say, action, words without action are irrelevant. Philosophy without action is irrelevant.